moving on then, we are going to get into our kind of awards. We're going to call it that, yeah, TFR awards of the 2025 F1 World Championship. And we're starting off with our top 5 drivers of the season. Now, I'm going to let you go first on this one, Logan, as I've spoken enough already in the last 5 minutes or so. So you can fill me in from 5th to 1st of your top 5 drivers of the season and tell me why for each.
Wow. Hold on. I gotta think of it in reverse order now.
Oh, go ahead. Go on. Just say 1st to 5th. I won't put you on the spot like that.
So first off, I'm talking about our drivers of the season. So I'm talking about how good the driver performed in comparison to the equipment that they're in. I'm not just talking about drivers standing because we were just talking about where they ended up in the standings, and obviously it's just first, fifth, right?
Very true.
So first is Verstappen, and it's not particularly close. Do I even have to explain anything? Don't think I do. Number two is already where things kind of get tough for me, but I'm going to say George Russell. The Mercedes wasn't the best. He won 2 races, and he really was a leader for Antonelli and that team and put in a lot of really good performances, sometimes getting in between the McLarens, getting involved with Verstappen. So in what he had, he did a really good job. Number three, I'm debating what third through fifth. Number three, I'm gonna have to say Hulkenberg.
Wow.
He got that podium, and that car was a crap box. And that wasn't his only good race either, so it wasn't like a one-off. Now, he didn't have the best year overall, but like you can tell that the way that Sauber drove and raced was like they knew that if they just had everything go normal status quo, they couldn't compete. So they very much went for it in terms of setups and strategy. So obviously you're going to have very fluctuated results. So I feel like the reason we saw that was less because of the drivers and more just because of them just knowing they had to go for it. Getting that podium, he had a few amazing drives, beating for Ferraris at times. That was really good. Fourth, I'm gonna have to give it to Norris. He did clutch up the championship in the end. Wasn't particularly great all year long. But to be fair, he should have had the championship earlier because if we're talking about him versus Piastri, he had the mechanical failure and Piastri didn't. So he literally lost out on what they were first and second, 17 points in that regards. So it almost shouldn't even went down to the last race. But that's racing. You have good luck, bad luck. And, just comparing apples to apples, he had the mechanical failure, Piastri didn't. So that would be number 4. And number 5 to me is pretty hard. Like, my gut is telling me I could give it to Piastri. He was really on form, especially at the beginning of the year. He wasn't great all year, but he did have a lot of great drives, great qualifying sessions. I'm also thinking Albon. The Williams wasn't particularly great, but he beat Sainz in the Williams, which I predicted. And they did do a great job overall. I could even see giving it to like Ocon or Behrman, what they did in that Haas. It just gets really tough, but I'm going to give it to Isaac Hadjar
Nice.
because he had that, to sound British, that shocker at the beginning of Australia to start his career, right? And he really turned it around. He seems like he's got a really good head on his shoulders, and he obviously has talent. And I do think like he's really coming along. And in terms of the freshest crop of drivers, your Dewins, Colapintos, Bortoletos, Adjars, and all of them. As it stands right now, like I rate him the best of the lot by a little bit of a gap too, not a significant gap, but by a decent gap. So I feel like I gotta give him a shout and give him 5th overall. I want to say Piastri, but it's like McLaren was so good this championship show. Like to me, I compare it to like 2019 Mercedes, where it's like the car was the best, but not so much the best that no one could ever compete,
Mm.
right? and then what was it? The first 7 races of the year for 1-2s for Mercedes, because like Hamilton's really good when you can just turn a race into a time trial. He's really good in open air. I don't even necessarily just mean in the lead. Like he's really good at like long-term management consistency backed by a good qualifying. Bottas is like not quite as good in the qualifying, but maybe a little bit better in traffic. So it's like, but they were both doing great that whole year. So like it wasn't just the car; those drivers were doing incredibly well as well. Like so, if we could go back in time and have the 2019 grid, if we have 2019 Bottas and Hamilton and those McLarens versus these two McLaren drivers this year, like do we think that this 25 team beats that 2019 Mercedes team or comes even somewhat close? Like I don't at all. I don't even think they win more than 4 or 5 races.
Really?
So yeah, that's why I can't really put a Piastri even in the top five. I was gonna give Norris fifth, but like, hey, he won the championship and he did come up clutch when needed, and he didn't mess up in the wet as much as he has before. Still did. Still
That's
wasn't the
true.
best in the wet, but he
But
didn't have the absolute shockers that he's had the rest of his career.
exactly. So that was Verstappen, Russell, uh, Hulkenberg, Norris, and Hadjar.
Yeah,
Nice, nice. I like
I
it.
mean it's tough. It's tough, but I feel like that's at least a decent.
Yeah, I like it. It's very different from mine. So there's quite a mix here. Um, yeah, because I'm tempted to make a very very late change with this as well. But I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it. I think I am gonna slightly change it at the last moment. But anyways, I'll read it out. My number one driver of 2025 was, of course, Max Verstappen. I thought he absolutely outdrove that car and almost won the championship in by far not the quickest car, which I think any driver that almost does that. Same for the likes of Fernando Alonso in 2012. Any driver that can do that, I think, has massive, massive credit in the bank. And this was one of his best seasons, I think, in his career so far, because you think of Japan, you think of Baku, Monza, and Brazil as well. Although he didn't win that race in Brazil, I thought that was just incredible, that comeback. I'd actually almost go as far as say it's one of the drives of the season, for him to drag a podium out of that one. So Verstappen, for sure, was the best driver of the season for me. I then had Lando Norris in second, and I'll explain myself on this because I know a lot of people hear that and think, well, hang on a minute, he made so many mistakes this year and had the fastest car, and he did. He did make a lot of mistakes, and his first part of the season was very iffy, and he would definitely not be in the top five if you were judging it off that. However, he had a lot of setbacks, but every single time he was bouncing back this season. Look at the mistake he made in Canada, where he put himself quite far back behind Piastri in the championship, and he clawed that back. He then had the reliability issue in Zandvoort, put him back again, clawed that back very quickly. And I think for me, the two races at Mexico and Brazil, where he was unbeatable almost, I actually think no one was going to beat him on them days. The combination of driver and car just kind of sold it for me that, yeah, he actually had a good season in the end. And those drives almost won him the championship for me. Your Vegas Qatar, that's out of his control. Like that wasn't his fault, and he would have wrapped it up long, long ago. So that's why I've got Norris in second. I've got George Russell in third. Very easily could have put him in second. I think he's had a fantastic season. The most consistent driver, I would say, throughout the whole year. And yeah, with a slightly better car, I think on certain races this season, I think he would have been a bit closer at the kind of top of the standings. He would never have won the championship this season, but he could have definitely been a lot closer. I think he also destroyed Antonelli as a teammate, although it was his rookie year. It just showed the difference between the two drivers at this moment in time. But yeah, I think Russell is ready to fight for a championship now next year if the car is able to do so. I think actually got, this is my late change. I had Piastri fourth, but now I've got Charles Leclerc in fourth. And I think, to be honest, he had 7 podiums this season. And I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but there was a lot of front row starts and a pole position at Hungary. I think with how bad that car is, he's actually had a pretty good season, because to get that many podiums, and Hamilton has 0, by the way, and 0 pole positions, I think that's pretty damn good from Charles. He's definitely not, up there with the best of this season. I think there's a bit of a gap from him to Russell, but I think Leclerc has actually gone a little bit under the radar with some of those performances, considering how rubbish that car is. And then in 5th, I've got Oscar Piastri. I was going to have Carlos Sainz there, but then I did remember he had such a bad start to the season. I think, to be fair, Logan, he had 2 podiums in a Williams. A Williams. 2 podiums in a Williams. That's pretty big.
But how could you put him better than the teammate that...
I know. But Albon had a bigger drop-off for me in the second half of the year than Carlos had at the first part of the year. Considering Albon has been at that team for year after year, knows the car inside out, that for me was inexcusable for him to drop off. If Albon kept his season consistent how it was, for sure he's in my top 5. But for Sainz to get 2 podiums in a Williams, he was in it, but he's not in my top 5 now. He's like knocking on the door. So anyways, Piastri, who is in 5th, for me, he had a huge drop-off, and there's no getting away from that. It was arguably one of the worst collapses in terms of a leader of a championship we've probably seen in a long time. But there's no forgetting, 3/4 of the season, he was the best in terms of the McLaren pair and the grid. He was winning race after race in dominant, kind of boring style, which is the mark of a champion. So I can't forget that, and so Piastri sneaks into my top 5. Any thoughts on that, Logan? Anything you want to rip apart there?
Oh, really?
Nice. That's good. I'm glad that we're quite aligned.